Good morning, everyone. Everyone who's here in the sanctuary here at Bread of Life Church. And for those of you out there in our cyber church, we welcome you. Not the pastor. This is a special presentation this morning, and I want to thank the pastor for giving us this space of time to address a very important topic that is very real right now in the world and in the church. And I entitled this, COVID, Are We Listening? God's mercy, the virus, the pandemic, and the vaccine. And you know what? It would help if I turned on the slideshow, wouldn't it? That would help. Okay. Again, COVID, are we listening? I was thinking about God's mercy. God's mercy in this season. This has been a very difficult year. 2020 and even now into 2021. It's been very difficult. It is because of the mercy and the grace of God that we got through 2020 and that we've gotten this far into 2021. And this scripture came to my mind, Lamentations 3:21-23. This is the God's Word translation because it puts it very clearly. And it says, the reason I can still find hope is that I keep this one thing in mind, the Lord's mercy. And you notice 21, look at the punctuation. There's a colon at the end of that scripture, that verse of scripture. And then it says, the Lord's mercy, period. We were not completely wiped out.
Right.
We were not completely wiped out. His compassion is never limited. It is new every morning. His faithfulness is great. We have in our midst, praise the Lord, a COVID survivor. Someone who is health compromised, contracted COVID, was in ICU, was on a ventilator. We were very concerned about her. She had all of the predispositions, the pre-existing conditions that could make this very difficult, if not impossible to overcome. By His great mercies.
By His great mercy.
Our dear sister Gwen got off the vent, got out of ICU, had a brief stint in rehabilitation. She's here in the sanctuary with us. But everybody did not make it over.
No.
Everybody didn't make it over. There are still people yet struggling. By His great mercy. By His great mercy. Do we realize it's been almost a year, almost exactly a year, since we talked about, are we listening? Are we listening to the scientists? And at that time, I introduced Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil deGrasse Tyson, if you recall, he's an astrophysicist. He's a scientist. And I won't go through his whole resume, but I brought it up last year because of something he said. We were just getting started in the pandemic. He was on Stephen Colbert's The Late Show. And Stephen asked him, after they went through all their usual interview, he says, what are your thoughts on this novel coronavirus? And Dr. Tyson said, will we listen to the scientists? Are we just going to wash our hands and do what they're telling us to do? So here it is a year later. Are we listening? Are we listening to the scientist? Him. God. 1 year later. Now let's take this a step further before we go into this deeper. What is science? We have a science teacher in our midst. What is science? Science, and this is the formal definition. It's and I italicize a very important piece. It is the pursuit and application of knowledge. Hold on to that word, knowledge. and understanding, those two words, knowledge and understanding, of the natural and social world following a systematic methodology based on evidence. In other words, we pursue the knowledge of what's around us based on what we can see and touch and examine and test. And it gives us, again, this is formal, a scientific methodology includes the following: objective observation, what we look at, what we can see, what we can touch, and then we measure that, and then we get data back from that. And it says possibly, although not necessarily, using mathematics as a tool. Now, that's one of the reasons why I didn't pursue a career in anything in the medical field. I'll talk about that more later because I hate math. And about everything medical has science and science first and math at the root because you have to measure data. You got to know stats. I hate math. I'm not good at it. My daughter struggles with it. So I'm very, very happy that there are those who are gifted with that knowledge. All knowledge, everything, science, everything in the natural world belongs to God. John 1:3, King James Version, all things were made by him. And without him was not anything made that was made. Nothing we have, every cell, every plant, every tree, every planet, the atmosphere, every single thing on this natural earth was made by God. And yes, that includes the coronavirus. That includes the virus. Didn't come from Satan. God is not happy with what's happening with his creation. This is his sword of judgment. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, talk about that more later. That's why his mercy is so great. Now let's talk more about knowledge, because that's one of the reasons why we're doing this morning. Proverbs 15:14, King James Version says, "The heart of him that hath understanding seeketh knowledge, but the mouth of fools feedeth on foolishness." Let that sink in. The heart, who of us, we all know, we understand there's a virus, right? We all know that. We'd have to be living in a cave somewhere if we did not know that COVID-19 has been around now for over a year, or if not longer. We just didn't know about it. But now we need knowledge. We understand it, but we need the knowledge. Here it is again in the God's Word version. The mind of a person who has understanding searches for knowledge, but the mouths of fools feed on stupidity. Conspiracy theories. This is a hoax. We don't need to wear masks. We don't need to social distance. This kind of stuff is even in the church. Right. It's sad, but it is true. Right. Let's take it further. And it's interesting that Proverbs 18 pretty much repeats the other verse. The heart of the prudent getteth knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeketh knowledge. God's Word's translation. The mind of a person who has understanding acquires knowledge. The ears of wise people seek knowledge. I hope I have the ears of wise people, both here and both there. Because there are things that are circulating in our community and in our church that really have vexed my spirit, especially as it relates to, as I just said before, the knowledge of the virus, how it spreads, and especially even more so now with the vaccine. Now, what's in the next slide is a complete presentation, and when I found this, and I'll tell you how I found it, I got an email from Barnes Jewish, because our physicians are affiliated with Barnes Jewish from WashU. And it was for the registration for the vaccine. So as I was going through that whole process, I started opening up links, and those are like links in an email or in a for those of you who are not familiar with the internet, they take you to other articles and other places where you can get more information. So I started opening up some of these other links, and I see this video because I was trying to figure out a way being a lay person who has knowledge, and the reason why I have knowledge of medicine, and God is awesome. He is so awesome in the way He orchestrated my steps and ordered my life, so I was able to be in different jobs, different careers, different positions that gave me exposure to things. He knew what was going to be needed at this season. So one of my jobs was as a pharmaceutical representative. And in order to sell, I sold drugs to doctors. I promoted to nurses and the physicians in hospitals in some cases, but mostly in the offices. So I had to learn medicine. I had to learn almost as much as they did on a very practical level, because I had to understand what questions they were asking me. I had to be ready to go toe-to-toe with them about my drugs, about the drugs I was trying to convince them to use. So I sold everything from cardiovascular drugs, drugs that treat heart failure. I sold diabetic drugs, one that so many people are on now. A couple people right here, 3 people in this congregation are on it. And because of that, I was able to go to medical schools, and I attended rounds with cardiologists. I got a lot of knowledge, but I don't have the credentials. So I got my backup here today. My niece, Marie Nicole Turner, Nikki, and most of you already know her. Nikki is a nurse practitioner at Children's Hospital. Is that okay that I said that to the global world? Too late now. But I'm able to talk to people, I'm able to help, but I don't have the credentials. I didn't go to school. She obviously is good at math and science.
I think I'm very average at math.
You're very average, she says. Because she's a nurse practitioner, which is just a step away from being a physician. She can actually prescribe. You're able to do that in the state of Missouri? Yeah, I know, because I used to.
Not controlled substances.
Not controlled, but
Everything.
I would detail the nurse practitioners. If I couldn't get to a doc as a drug rep, I would talk to a nurse practitioner. Often they were my best resource.
Yeah.
Because they would listen more than doctors. They would understand side effects, etc. But I have my backup because I don't have the credentials. I have the affinity, which just means that God has given me the ability, the knowledge to understand and to hopefully impart it, but I haven't got the credentials. So with that said, as I was going through the Barnes materials, I found this video. And this is a video presented by, and this is two big titles, an immunologist and a microbiologist, which just means, first of all, she's very smart. Yeah. But she, and has a lot of degrees, but she is well-versed and very well able to explain the virus and, most importantly, the vaccine and how it works. And she breaks it down. She goes up and puts up every myth that is out there, and she breaks it down and knocks it down and explains why it's not true. So I'm going to go ahead and let this play. It's about 15, 20 minutes. It's very interesting. And let's just take a listen here. It should. It's not playing through the TV.
It's my great privilege to be a doctor.
Let me stop it, because it's not playing through the television. Technical difficulties, everyone. Bear with us a second. Let me unplug it and plug it in again. Sometimes that makes a difference. Bear with us, everyone, please. Let me get back to... I heard a pop. Let's see if that works. There we go.
It's my great privilege that we have Dr. Kimberly Thomas from Washington University. Fantastic to have her volunteering to spend some time with us today. Expert in immunology and also infectious disease. You see some of her qualifications there, which are fantastic, obviously. Postdoc at UCLA, postdoc at WashU, senior scientist at WashU, and on the research track as an instructor, Department of Pediatrics at WashU, PhD from University of Alabama. Fantastic to have her with us today, and over 20 peer-reviewed publications in the field of immunology. She's going to walk us through a briefing or myth busting to help us all understand the vaccines, the mRNA vaccines, because this is something that, number one, all of us individually should understand, but also we know we get a lot of questions from our team members about this. We want to help all of you to be able to understand better, but also explain better and help bust some of those myths. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Thomas to walk us through her presentation. Again, huge appreciation, Dr. Thomas, for all the time that you invested in preparing for this session and spending time with us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really honored and excited to be here to speak with you today about the SARS-CoV-2 COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. And just a quick note, although I am an employee of WashU, today I'm not officially here on behalf of them, but rather on behalf of the scientific community at large and as a resident of the state of Missouri. So I'm hoping today's talk really helps alleviate some of the unknowns and anxiety surrounding these vaccines. And on a personal note, my family and friends have been calling me throughout this pandemic, trying to help them better understand everything they hear on the news and answer all the questions they have about COVID-19, vaccines included. So my objectives today are to communicate that these COVID-19 mRNA vaccines are highly safe and effective, have minimal potential side effects, and are really crucial for getting society back to quote unquote normal function. And as I was putting together this talk, it seemed to me that maybe the best way for us to learn about the vaccines was perhaps to deconstruct a lot of the myths surrounding them one by one. So I went out and looked up some of the top myths or untruths that were surrounding these vaccines, and I'm hoping that together we can go through them. And if you have any questions, please at any time let me know, and I'll be happy to take them. So the first myth that I found that was really disconcerting is that these vaccines will give you COVID-19, but the vaccine isn't actually capable of doing that, and this is why. So to get sick with COVID-19, you need to be infected by this fully intact SARS-CoV-2 virus containing all of its parts, its genetic material. Let me put my pointer on. Can you see this? The genetic material within the virus, and also the spike proteins on the surrounding outside portion of the virus. However, these messenger ribonucleic acid or mRNA vaccines only contain 4 ingredients. They contain messenger RNA or mRNA, lipids, salts, and sugars. The mRNA encodes for the spike protein, which is what your immune system sees first and responds to. And then the salts and sugars are located inside this carrier to help stabilize the mRNA until it gets into your cells. And then lastly, this lipid carrier, which surrounds the mRNA and salts and sugars, and this helps the vaccine get taken up by your cells. So the vaccines can't give you COVID-19 because they physically do not have all the materials required to be infectious. They're just a copy of one piece of virus. Another myth is that these vaccines contain aborted fetal cells, but I just showed you that these vaccines contain 4 types of materials. Both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines contain mRNA, lipids, salts, and sugar. And these ingredients are listed on the vaccine packaging, so you can read exactly what's in the vaccines. No aborted fetal cells. So the next myth is that the vaccine will change your DNA. And to be honest, I had a long talk with my brother on this one, actually. But this can't happen for a few reasons, so I'm going to walk through them. First, the vaccine gets taken up. Sorry, my pointer is in the way. Are you going to go up? There you go. The vaccine gets taken up by your cell, mediated by that lipid carrier surrounding the vaccine. And then the mRNA is revealed, and it's immediately processed. And it's processed into those spike proteins that it codes for. And these spike proteins are secreted by your cells and then found by your immune system, which then goes along and makes that immune memory to protect you from disease. So after the mRNA is processed into these proteins, it actually gets sent to your cell's trash compactor, essentially, and it's degraded. So it's not hanging around for a long time. And then your DNA, your genes, they're located over here in your nucleus on the other part of your cell, and they're surrounded by a nuclear membrane. And the RNA actually can't get through your nuclear membrane and into your nucleus. So there's no way for the mRNA to physically get to your DNA or your genes. And then on top of that, DNA and RNA actually physically can't combine, kind of like oil and water. So these are the reasons why the vaccine can't change your DNA. It gets used up immediately and then degraded. It physically can't get to your DNA because it can't go through this membrane. And then it also can't mix with your DNA. They just physically don't interact. Another common misconception is that because the vaccines were ready so quickly compared to other vaccines that we may be familiar with, that corners must have been cut. And this is absolutely false. All vaccines go through the same developmental and regulatory processes, and these vaccines were no exception. And to top it all off, mRNA vaccine technology, even though we call them new vaccines, the technology has been around for a while. It's not brand new. It's been in existence. The ability to use mRNA as a vaccine was discovered in the early 1990s, but it was originally set aside because of low stability and efficacy. However, in the 2010s, scientists identified new technologies like that lipid carrier that I showed you earlier, which helps improve the efficacy of mRNA vaccines. Also, we've learned how to do science a lot better and a lot faster. So things move at a faster pace due to additional technologies you may have heard of, like next generation sequencing. And in fact, these mRNA technologies that have been around for the past 20 to 30 years, they've been being used as we're talking to develop vaccines for other diseases like Zika and rabies and influenza. There are already vaccines in the developmental process using this mRNA technology. So it's not as new as we might think. And so basically all of the tools for these vaccines that we're seeing, they're already around. They were just ready and waiting to be adapted to be used for SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19. Also, the entire vaccine development process was expedited, and that was for multiple reasons. So over here on the left, you can see a schematic of the vaccine development process. And the timelines for these processes are really dependent on three things: on the urgency or need for the vaccine, and then also on the funds available for vaccine development and production, and then also on the type of vaccine being produced. Some vaccines take longer to make than others. So this being a pandemic where the need is great and urgent, and that these are mRNA vaccines, a specific type of technology, sped this process up. First, this GMP process development, good manufacturing practice, this was expedited because mRNA vaccines are less complex to make than other vaccine types. And like I mentioned, those lipid carriers and salts and sugars are already being used in other development processes, so they were available to use. Second, because the burden of disease is so high and we have so many cases of COVID-19, trials were able to meet their interim checkpoints a lot quicker than usual. Also, these trials were performed on a global level, so not just in one area. They were pulling patients from all over. Third, because this is a pandemic and the need is so great and urgent, these licensure agencies moved all of their efforts towards these vaccine productions. They moved them to the top of the to-do list, so they set other things to the side to focus on this. And then fourth, these mRNA vaccines are actually very easy to scale up for mass production compared to other vaccine types, so this step could also be expedited. And then lastly, companies had little monetary risk with the development of these vaccines as the government provided the financial support. So part of Operation Warp Speed was that the Department of Health and Human Services provided millions of dollars to these companies to expedite these trials and this development. So readily available funds meant that we could do multiple steps simultaneously, allowing us to speed up this whole process. So collectively, all of these are reasons why we have a vaccine so quickly, not because any corners were cut. The next myth that I've heard of is that these vaccines aren't as effective as other vaccines. Well, what does effective mean, and how do we test this? So efficacy is defined as the percentage reduction of disease in a vaccinated group of people compared to an unvaccinated group of people. And the way we measure this is by immunizing large groups of people with either the vaccine, here in red, or a placebo in blue. And a placebo is just a harmless fake immunization. Some people will call it salt water or sugar water. And then we monitor over time to see if anyone gets sick. And then we record the number of cases that occurs in each group. So we have case rate over here on the y-axis. And then the number of cases or incidents in the placebo group compared to the vaccinated group tells us how effective the vaccine is. And if we have a low incidence in this vaccine group, that means that the vaccine protects us from disease. So let's look at the trial results. Over here on the left, we have Pfizer, and then on the right, we have Moderna. And you can see that in both trials, vaccination prevented COVID-19 case rate more than placebo treatment did. And this is seen by these low level of cases in the vaccinated groups for both trials. And then importantly, there were similar numbers of cases in both the vaccinated Pfizer group and the vaccinated Moderna group, suggesting that these vaccines are similarly and highly effective. Neither is better than the other. They are both great vaccines. So how do these vaccine results compare to other vaccine trials? When we compare to two other vaccine trials, the shingles vaccine trial that was run by GlaxoSmithKline, and then the Prevnar pneumococcal vaccine trial, which was also run by Pfizer, we actually find that there are very few differences between the trials with respect to number of enrollees and efficacy. You can see that all four trials had enrolled tens of thousands of individuals. So some trials are not enrolling 100 people versus 100,000 people. They're all within the same area. And then also you can see that the efficacy was on par with the shingles vaccine. 95% for Pfizer, 94.1% for Moderna, and 97% for shingles vaccine. And actually, these vaccines for SARS-CoV-2 are even more effective than the Prevnar pneumococcal vaccine. And I highlight this because this Prevnar pneumococcal vaccine is actually licensed for use and being actively used. So we have better efficacy than current vaccines that are already in use. And lastly, some people are saying, how can you tell if something is effective when you have such low numbers of cases, right? If you enrolled 43,000 people, but you only have 162 cases of disease, how can you tell it's effective? But this is standard practice across all trials. You can see here, 210, 90. These numbers are all on par. So these trials were run with the same integrity, and you get the similar efficacy as other trials. So no difference there between those trials. There we go. Oh, too far, sorry. So another rumor is that these vaccines are not safe to take. And this is also false. The FDA and independent safety monitoring teams found that these vaccines are in fact very safe to take, and the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risk of not being vaccinated. And there were no vaccine-related deaths, and serious adverse events were extremely rare in both trials. In fact, you have a higher risk of dying in a car crash on a daily basis than you do of having a severe reaction to the vaccine. So reports of a few allergic reactions to the vaccines in the past week have caused people to think that the vaccines are not safe for people with allergies. However, allergic reactions to vaccines are not standard or expected, and the normal rate of somebody having an allergic reaction to a vaccine is 1 in a million. Also, allergies are highly specific. For instance, people who are allergic to pineapple, that's the one thing they're allergic to, and it's very specific. So if you are allergic to the few ingredients that are in the vaccine, then of course you shouldn't take it. But you probably know if you are allergic to the specific ingredients because allergies are so specific. And then when you arrive to get your vaccine, you're going to fill out a screening questionnaire like you see on the right over here. And this is going to be done with your healthcare provider to determine if you are at risk for an allergic reaction. And if you are, then you won't be given the vaccine. And then everybody who gets the vaccine has to wait for 15 minutes. And this is because allergic reactions happen almost instantaneously. So we want you to be in a healthcare setting if you are going to have a reaction so that you can get a treatment, which is normally, I know a lot of you have probably heard of epinephrine or the use of an EpiPen and then Benadryl to manage that severe anaphylactic shock. And then lastly, doctors pretty much agree that if you have common mild allergies, there is no reason to not get the vaccine. You should be A-okay to get it. And then lastly, there's a rumor going around that these vaccines cause infertility, and I actually struggled to find out where this rumor came from because it was so vague. And it's a completely baseless blog post where somebody suggested that the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein was similar enough to your placental proteins that your immune system would then attack your placenta and cause infertility. However, these proteins are less than 20% similar, and a neonatal immunologist suggested that it would be like confusing a rhinoceros for a jaguar because they were wearing the same collar. So it just goes to show you how bizarre of a statement this was, and we actually have no evidence to suggest that these vaccines would cause infertility, and other vaccines do not cause infertility as well. And then just kind of a mind game would be the vaccine induces antibodies against the spike protein. Well, when you naturally get infected by SARS-CoV-2, you also make antibodies to the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. So that would imply that all of the women in the world who have now had COVID-19 would now be infertile. And if that was the case, I assure you we would have heard about that. So that is definitely a myth. So that's not to say that you won't have some side effects after the vaccine. So I just wanted to touch on maybe what you can expect after you get the vaccine for the following 2 to 3 days. The top 5 side effects that were experienced by individuals in both trials were arm pain, headache, fatigue, chills, and muscle pain. But let's go through these. So as you can see, most people, roughly 80% of all individuals, reported mild to moderate arm pain after receiving the vaccine, and this went away by roughly 3 days afterwards. Less than half the people who received the vaccine reported a headache, most of them mild in nature. Again, less than half the people receiving the vaccine reported some fatigue, both mild to moderate. Again, so 1 in 2 people will feel tired after the vaccine. And then most people did not report having any chills, but for those that did, the majority of them said they had mild chills for a couple of days post-vaccination. And then lastly, muscle pain was reported in about 21% of the individuals who received the vaccine. So I think the important thing to know is that these are actually all common side effects of vaccination, very similar to a flu vaccine, and can be handled with Tylenol. When I got my flu vaccine earlier this year, I actually made a comment to one of my friends saying, wow, this one hurt more this year than last year, and my arm was definitely in pain for a couple days, but again, these are common for most vaccinations. And then just a couple more notes is that they reported that the people who were over the age of 55 reported less pain than those individuals between the 16 to 55-year-old groups. And then some of these side effects were a little more pronounced after the second dose. And that's because your immune system is doing its job. It's recognizing the vaccine much quicker, and so it's responding. So that's a good thing. And this kind of ties into the next myth is that people are saying, well, why do I need to take both doses? I should just take 1 dose. I only take 1 dose of the flu vaccine. Well, unfortunately, we have to take both doses for these vaccines. And the reason is we need them both so we can build that really robust immune memory to SARS-CoV-2 and prevent disease. And so I just wanted to touch on a couple things about the 2 doses. The doses are 3 to 4 weeks apart. So just have your calendar handy when you go get your first dose so you can mark when you're going to get your second one, depending on if you have Pfizer or Moderna. Pfizer is 28 days and Pfizer is 21 days and Moderna is 28 days. Next, both of these doses need to be from the same company. If you got Moderna for dose 1, you need to get Moderna for dose 2. You can't mix and match. And then when you get your first dose, they're going to give you a COVID-19 vaccination record card. And this is great because it allows you to keep track of which dose you got. And I know a lot of people are taking pictures of these so they have them on their phones so they know exactly which dose they have. So when they go back to the next one, they get the same thing. And then, like I mentioned above, the side effects may be a little bit worse after your second dose, but that just means that your immune memory is working. So both doses, not just one. And then I think the last myth is that as soon as you're vaccinated, you can take your mask off. Unfortunately, I know we all want to take our masks off, but this is not the case. We can't take our masks off until a lot more people are vaccinated. We essentially have to reach a level of herd immunity. So in the US, that means 210 million people need to be vaccinated. So I wanted to look a little bit closer at the concept of herd immunity. I'm sure you've heard the term around a lot, and I think this image really helps to understand it. So if you look here on the top left panel, the people in blue, they have no immunity, so they've never been infected by SARS-CoV-2 before. And then if there are people who have SARS-CoV-2 infections, the disease spreads throughout the population relatively quickly, which is what we're seeing now. In the middle panel here, you have a similar situation, but you have a few yellow individuals, and these yellow individuals are immunized, so they have seen the SARS-CoV-2 virus before and probably had COVID-19. So we say that they're immunized and have immunity. However, there aren't enough people in the population with immunity such that when you have two infected individuals come into the population, they get all of the blue people sick. And so we still have spread of the disease. But in this last panel down here, you see that most of the population has immunity to SARS-CoV-2. And so when these sick individuals come in, they can't transmit to any new unimmunized people, and so we are able to stop the spread of disease. So it's this last panel here that is herd immunity, and experts have identified for this virus specifically, based on its R0, which I think Dr. Powderly talked to you about, we need to reach 70% of the population to have immunity before we will achieve this situation and stop the spread of disease. So how do we get from here, where we're at now, where people are still getting sick, to herd immunity? We have two options. We can let natural immunity run its course, but this is going to result in an estimated 3 to 5 million more deaths from COVID-19. That's 100 times the amount of deaths that have already occurred in the United States. And this is just US numbers. I don't even know what the global scale would be. Alternatively, we can vaccinate everyone, and this would save many, 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 many lives. So until we reach herd immunity, where the rest of the population is protected, we need to keep practicing these 3 W's, even though we're slowly getting everybody vaccinated. We need to wash our hands, watch our distance and stay 6 feet apart, and wear our masks. And the reason is because while vaccination keeps you from getting sick, personally, it doesn't mean that you can't harbor the virus and spread it to other unvaccinated individuals, like in that middle panel that I showed you. So I think I wanted to end with this thought. Currently, we are all here, masked up, physically isolated and distanced and surrounded by virus. And we really want to get back to quote unquote normal, whatever your normal is, if it's family gatherings, going to sporting events, going out to the bar and having a beer and celebrating. And the only way we get there is through herd immunity. That's how we're going to get there. And we have 2 options. We can let natural immunity take its course, like I mentioned. This is estimated. We have no clue how long this could take. It could take years. And again, the cost of 3 to 5 million more lives. Or we can vaccinate everybody. And this is really the safest and fastest. And if we all get on board and do it, we get back to quote unquote normal quicker. So with that, I'd like to say thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I wanted to share, and this you couldn't have asked for a better already done presentation, because she covered a lot of common misunderstandings, fallacies, myths, and she busted every one of them beautifully.
I have nothing else to add.
Our nurse Nikki said she has nothing else to add. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
it was perfect, and I pretty much easy to understand. I'm sure some of it may be a little highbrow, as we say, But still, I had forgotten she put the herd immunity in there, which is important to understand. A lot of people don't understand. And I wanted to show, this is how awesome God is. Because I think about for such a time as this. This is the woman behind mRNA research. In 1995, she started this. She started this, and no one would put money in it. No one helped her. She partnered with another scientist, and they didn't get anywhere. And now she's a senior vice president of the company, Pfizer, not Pfizer, but the sister company, BioNTech. She is a senior vice president, and I was reading what she said when she found out that it was her research 40 years ago almost that got us this vaccine. She said, redemption. She says, I was grabbing the air. I thought I was going to fall over. You see, God owns all knowledge. Even if she doesn't have a relationship with God, God was putting that her because he gave her that ability. She probably didn't realize that the scientist was directing her to look into this research. Guess what? Because in a few years, we're going to need that knowledge I'm letting you have. You're going to have to impart that to other medical teams and scientists so that my mercy can be shown on my people who I'm going to whoop up because they're not doing what I told them to do.
Right.
I'm not going to let them all die. I'm going to give them a way out. And this is the way out because there's still space to repent. He could have killed all of us. This thing is amazingly stealthy. It's amazing how God can introduce a virus into the air, literally into the atmosphere, that some people get, and this is the thing that blows my mind, and Nikki, I was listening to Dr. Fauci, how we learned that 40 to 50% of the spread is asymptomatic, which means you can get it, never know you got it, and spread it. A lot of diseases, you know you get sick. You get the flu, you know you're sick. It's pretty much standard. But this thing, you never know what's going to happen. You could get it, lose your sense of taste and smell, get the sniffles, and be over it. You could get it, be devastatingly sick like Sister Gwen, and get over it. We've got, Lord help, a police officer who's been fighting it for months, just getting to a rehab center. There's a lot of people that survive, but they've lost fingers and toes because there's blood vessel inflammation that happens, and I don't know, all those things, those other complications that occur while the body's fighting off the disease. There's this thing called
we're still learning about it.
Exactly.
We don't even know like some of the long-term effects because now that we've been into a year into this, they're just now finding how this is affecting people like after the acute phase or after the acute illness. And there are some people that have lasting heart problems from it. There are some people that have lasting muscle weakness from it, tiredness, just low energy for months afterwards. And so like we're in that phase where, because this is a completely novel or new virus, there's a lot that we are still learning as we go. So there's a lot of people out there who are still, they call it long COVID.
Yeah, the long term.
Yeah,
long
and
haulers.
those are people who like are back home out of the hospital if they went to the hospital, but they have these lingering effects that, you know, it diminishes their quality of life. And I kind of want to comment on something you said earlier, Alinda, where you were saying about the asymptomatic. The thing with the asymptomatic group of people that are out here spreading it, that is why it's so important to wear a mask, even if you don't feel sick. It's not necessarily about you, because you may be in a low-risk population, you know, where it won't do anything to you. But the problem is you can spread that to somebody else who it will affect. And at the end of the day, like, we all have to live together in society, and so, like, everything is not about you. You have to consider your fellow man. And that is the importance of wearing a mask, is that if you do harbor this virus, and you're part of that 35 to 45% is what I've heard, you don't want to be, I don't want that on my conscience, spreading that. Right. So like, I'm going to wear a mask, and I wear one around my parents. Even though all of us have been vaccinated, before we were vaccinated, I wore a mask around my parents, even though our bubble was small, and outside of work in the grocery store, I don't go many places. But I have to work, and I work in a healthcare environment. Pediatrics, you're not seeing a whole lot of COVID in the pediatric population, and what you do see, it's not as detrimental. But it's still out there, and I could still be one of those asymptomatic people because I'm exposed to people every day. And so, like, I'm not going to have that risk on me. It's spreading that to somebody who is high risk, somebody who has diabetes, or somebody who's obese, or has hypertension, or what have you. And we also know, too, that there's a lot of people, I think I saw a statistic on the CDC yesterday that said about 6% of the people that have died from COVID had no pre-existing conditions, had no risk factors, and they still died from it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, this disease, like, it's unpredictable.
It's very unpredictable. And
it's unpredictable, and it's stealthy, and it is very easily transmissible between humans.
Yes.
So, which is the reason for the 6 feet distance.
Right.
So.
And that's the reason that I'm not wearing my mask now, but people are spread out, for those of you who are listening here. And one of the things you said, we just had a Sunday school lesson about the love of God. One of the ways we show, and we as Christians, show our love for the fellow man, love your neighbor as yourself. You don't want to get COVID. You don't want anybody else to get COVID. That's why I don't understand why we politicize this, why we make it an issue of faith. You know, wearing a mask doesn't mean you don't have faith. You trust God to take care of you, but you still put your seatbelt on. You trust God that he's going to keep you, but you still pay your car insurance. We still go to the doctor. We still brush our teeth. You don't say, well, God's going to take care of me. I ain't brushing my teeth. I ain't wearing my seatbelt. I ain't paying my insurance. I ain't doing none of that because God's going to take care of me. I mean, that's an extreme hyperbole exaggeration, but that's the way, unfortunately, I'm just sad to see so much of this thinking, this erroneous thinking. It's not about faith. It's about taking care of you and love of your fellow man. That's the faith. That's the obedience. And we were talking about it in the Sunday school lesson.
Well,
that's the part of the work. Go ahead, Nikki.
I also think I am no theologian. I am no biblical scholar. But oh, you mean to
come. Be my Vanna.
Oh, okay, you're Vanna.
Caitlin.
I think also the issue of faith has to realize that the issue of faith without works is dead, right? And so, like, if we're talking about we have all this faith that God is going to keep us and heal us, that's great. But like part of that faith and part of that works to like actually like exemplify or exhibit your faith is actually kind of like doing those things like wearing a mask, getting a vaccine when it is. And I am not here to push anyone to get a vaccine. I am here to simply inform,
right? So
that and to make sure that everybody has the correct knowledge so that they can make their own informed decision.
Right.
Don't take what I say. I mean, consult the Lord. In all thy ways, acknowledge Him. Do that. But I think part of your works to put your faith in action is doing those things that we know and have been proven to be effective. That is what, we always talk about the blood of Jesus being efficacious. Okay, well, He also gives man. The way that God works is through us. Through human agency, right?
Grace is accentuated through people.
Exactly.
And this is His grace and mercy.
Exactly. And so, like, if God is going to work through other people and get that to us, well, that includes giving people knowledge to be able to help us to be able to live
like Caitlin did.
Yes.
He blessed her with the knowledge.
Exactly. And so, ignoring all of that has nothing to do with God or faith, in my humble opinion. And part of faith is actually, kind of taking the knowledge that is out there and applying it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
That's life application.
Yeah,
that's
exactly what living for God is. We talk about reading it, internalizing it, and applying it. What was it? Personalizing it.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing. We have the knowledge.
Yeah.
We can't put God in a box. Apostle McCoy at Faith Biblical Temple years ago made a comment, and some of his statements keep coming back to me. He said, we do so much out of tradition, but not examination. And unfortunately, the church, we do things in these kind of coded, we've done this way all the time, and we don't think outside the box. We keep God in this little, He's a great blesser and He's a healer, but we don't look at how awesome He is. We don't look at the fact that He does these things, that He puts these seeds of knowledge in people like her that we wouldn't think about. But that's His work. That's His grace and His mercy. Even the virus, as I just said, as stealthy as it is, who else would design something that could save some people, barely touch them, and kill some other people? Again, it's His grace and mercy. And like Nikki said, we're not here to try to force it by. Someone posted something that just really upset me. It said, "Oh, we're getting ready to shame people into getting a vaccine." That's not what this is about.
No, I'm not here to do that, and now I was very clear on that.
No, we're not.
I'm not here to shame, because it is very controversial, and unfortunately, the way that our leadership handled this pandemic over the last year did not help the situation, and it's made it a lot more complex. This is a public health issue. This is not a political one.
Right.
It is not a spiritual one. It is a public health issue.
Right.
And there have been other public health epidemics and pandemics before this,
Right.
where people had, human nature and the conspiracy theories and all of that. And, like the last pandemic, the Spanish flu of 1918, it took them 36 months to get back to some sort of normalcy. We're at 12 months?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
we're in it for the long haul. And, when you get the vaccine, I saw something on Facebook yesterday that really also kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but I also realized that I feel like this person that posted it just probably needs to watch this video. Because I think it would explain a lot. And I think there is this hesitation where people are like, well, if I get the vaccine, I still have to wear a mask, and we still have to socially distance, and I still can't be around my family, and I still can't, the movies still aren't open, and I can't go back to doing all the things I was doing before, so why do that? That is a great question, and that is a great critical thought to have. But I think I forgot her name.
I forgot her name too.
Well, when she highlighted in the video that is temporary. We can get back to normalcy. We just have to wear the masks and socially distance for a little bit longer until this virus doesn't have a chance to spread and infect people who are not immunized, either by getting COVID or by getting the vaccine. And it's just a lot faster, and we can get back to normal a lot sooner if we get the vaccine, as opposed to waiting for all of us to get COVID.
Right.
Right.
Which is what natural immunity is,
Yeah.
and that could be devastating and incur 3 to 5 more million deaths. We're already at 500,000.
Just in the United States.
Just in the United
Now
States.
globally, we don't know.
So,
And look what
that's a lot of deaths. And that's 500,000 families have lost loved ones and have had, when they didn't expect to do that. And those are only the ones that we know that die from COVID.
Right.
There's thoughts that COVID has been out here before January 24th, when the first confirmed case in the United States, somewhere in California. It is my personal belief, and I know lots of other people in the healthcare community also believe that COVID was here before then.
Yes.
Before it's confirmed. And so, how many people died before then that the cause of death was listed as something different on their death certificate, or it was from some long-term effect that actually was COVID and people thought it was the flu.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, those are, there's people out there, what we know is 500,000 people, but there's probably more than that
Right.
that have actually died from this, disease. And so, and some of the ones that are high risk and older, we know that once you're above 65, 65, like you're automatically high risk because you're older, and it is affecting older people a lot differently than younger people. When you allow your younger family members to come around, they need to be masked.
Yeah, right.
They need to be masked.
Right.
Yes.
Especially if they're part of the younger generation that feels like they're invincible.
Yes.
Right.
And they're out there doing their thing, not unmasked around their friends.
Right.
Because if they get the virus, it's likely not going to hurt them.
Right.
But that doesn't mean they don't have the virus and that they're not bringing it to your house when they come to visit.
Right.
Right.
So, you still need to socially distance with your grandkids and your nieces and nephews that may be younger and just want to see you. And they need to be masked and you need to be masked.
Right.
Even if you're vaccinated, until we can, get to this place where, most of us,
Until we,
that's all I got.
I just wanted to share this too, just more on the science. Let's hang on to it.
Okay.
This is Dr. Kismikia Corbett. Now, this is an African-American female scientist that worked with Dr. Fauci. Everybody knows Dr. Anthony Fauci. And this is a quote from him. And he talks about the very vaccine is one of the two that's absolutely exquisite levels, as only Fauci would put it. And he talks about the efficacy there, but he goes on to say, and this is when he was trying to help address the hesitancy within the African-American community about getting the vaccine. He wanted people to know that there are black scientists out there, in this case a female, that was part of the team. and she goes by Kizzy. But I wanted you to also be aware of that, and also know this. Last Sunday, my husband and I got our first dose of the Pfizer vaccine. We got our Fauci ouchies. Last Sunday. We're fine. There's no horns going out of my head. There's no...
And I've gotten both doses.
And she's had both doses.
People are reporting more intense side effects.
The second dose.
Second dose, but I had some joint aches and some pain, but nothing in some arm pain. And my arm is actually still a little sore. It's been, I don't know, a couple of weeks now since my second one. But most of the people that are getting it are not having more than what was highlighted in that video. Chills, headache, dizziness, that kind of thing, or just feeling like you're just weak and just don't feel good. Like one of my aunts got it. Yeah, one of my aunts got it in Chicago, and she, slept most of Saturday. But other than that, she's fine. So, and both my parents, they were fine. They didn't even have like extreme tiredness.
She said that older people seem to have as severe symptoms. I think our immune systems are kind of, they said they're a little tired.
They're old, older.
But I was telling David, I said, we were feeling tired, so that means the mRNA is working. I said, it's in there telling, hey, me and my cartoon mind, and said, hey, I got a message for you.
Yeah. Well, it shows that your immune system
is working. It said, here it is. If you see this, kill it. So the second dose, here it is.
Yeah.
Kill it, really kill it. And that means that it's working. That message that the vaccine sent to our cells. God is amazing. He's amazing. He has allowed us in His mercy to be able to determine to come up with this vaccine. We're actually at this point. Nikki's up here because that was my next slide. Was updates and questions. And please, this is the perfect place. If you have questions, again, we're not here to try to make anybody get the vaccine.
Definitely not.
But the goal was, when I was seeing these posts, I said, and so much we were looking at the black church, the history of the black church, and the black church has been the focus for political, anything for information to get to the black community. It's where you start as a church for anything in our lives. And when, in fact, that's the way we were able to actually get the vaccine. There was a concerted effort, we learned, to get clergy, black clergy, to get the vaccine to be the example to the churches, because vaccine doses weren't coming into the city. Am I correct? They were going to Missouri. They were coming into the city because they were saying, they're not taking the vaccine.
Yeah.
So it's going to rural white areas. And I have to thank Dr. Garza for having the guts to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
He wasn't too popular for saying that. I'm calling his name out, but he is part of the pandemic force.
Yeah, so he's the leader.
He's the leader, exactly. I'm sorry, he is the leader. And I'm thankful that he was bold enough to say that.
Absolutely.
In his kind of low-key ways, real low-key with it. He went to UMKC, by the way, so, he got some grad degree there. So our daughter goes to school there. But anyway, so I was glad he pointed that out. So because of that, there was an effort to bring more vaccines into the black community, and they used clergy. And we got a call from actually Dr. Nick Eccles.
Yeah.
Dr. Eccles himself called us and said, I have a list of clergy, and are you willing to come and get the vaccine? Well, at first I was hesitant. I was hesitant when this all started, honestly, myself, because I didn't know about it. I took the time, again, using the knowledge that I was able to gain being a drug rep, to dig in and figure out what is this. And that's how I got over my hesitancy. Oh, okay, this technology's been here. Messenger RNA, okay, I get it. So I'll get it. So when I found that out, I thought, I don't want to jump ahead of protocol. I don't want to get ahead of first responders, teachers, healthcare workers. But when it was explained the way it was explained, we want you all to be an example. And I was very pleased to see the number of elderly African-American people at the site. And also one of our other local bishops was there as well. And I understand there's another pastor, a well-known pastor here, that's also been vaccinated. So that is our goal, is to make sure that everyone is informed, that these myths are knocked down. That you don't have to be afraid of them. We're still here. Yeah, my arm's still a little sore, but I'm fine. I'm very pleased to have been able to get the vaccine and hopefully get my second dose in I guess 2 weeks now.
Yeah, and I do want to address. I completely understand the hesitancy within the Black community and some other brown communities, because the Native American community is also right now. They're losing lots of people left and right. This virus is disproportionately affecting Black people, Hispanic people, and Native American people disproportionately. Like, I actually was just looking up some statistics on the CDC website, and among some of the younger Black and Latino folks, so like ages like 18 to like 50, our death rate for that, Black people only make up 13% of the U.S. population. But from ages 18 to like 50, 49, 50, we are making up the death rate in COVID compared to white people who are a lot more of the population, make up a lot more of the population than we do. So that means that it is taking us out quicker. And at higher chunks of people. And so, like, we got to be mindful. And there are other social reasons why that is happening. A lot of us are essential workers. A lot of us, because poverty, a lot of times leads to multi-generational households. And so then you got people kind of crowded in a living space. Also, education comes with some of the social things. And we know that our educational system is very, very inequitable as well, and so then you have people that just don't even understand, like, they just don't understand all of this talk that we're doing, and so they don't even understand the necessity of wearing a mask. And there are some that just don't care. Like, I'll be honest, there's some that just don't care because either I'm young and I'm fine, I don't care, or just ones that just feel like it's just their belief system, and you're not going to change that, and so, like, I'm fine, I'm not trying to change that. So I get the hesitancy with the Black community with vaccines and the healthcare system, because historically, science and medicine has been weaponized against people that look like us. And then also just even, now since we have more access to healthcare for a lot of us, the feeling in the healthcare system is not, we don't feel like we're heard. We don't feel like we're listened to. And so a lot of times we won't go to the doctor until we feel like we need to go to the doctor, and usually by that time something is already wrong. And so, like, I get why, and a lot of the times, like Alinda was saying, the Black church was the central place for everything for Black life, for politics. For a lot of the HBCUs started from a church basement kind of thing, and so.
Historical Black colleges.
HBCUs. Sorry, historically Black colleges and universities. Spelman, Morehouse, like all of those that are, about to probably make a comeback, since, our vice president is a proud HBCU grad.
I'm kind of sorry I didn't finish my AKA pledge now.
I know, right? I'm sorry. I know it's in the grad chapter. And so, like, I get it, and a lot of times, Black people will listen to their pastors before they will listen to their doctor. Like, just to be real and just to be honest about it, y'all will listen to y'all's pastor before y'all will listen to your doctor. So that is the push. And so they're also trying to get also Black health professionals and Black doctors as well. If you notice, the first person to get the vaccine in New York was a Black nurse. And so I've gotten it. I have several, I don't work with a ton of Black people in my immediate division, but we've all been vaccinated. And also my thing, I guess, when I thought about it, because I was also a little hesitant as well, just kind of like, there's Tuskegee out there, and there's just, just other things out there that just make you mistrust the government and the healthcare institution, and rightfully so. But I'm also thinking this is not just an American problem, this is a worldwide problem. So, like, this is not just affecting Black people, and with all the regulations that you have to have out there now for clinical trials and for emergency use and just to get a drug on me, like, there's too many regulations that it just would be odd for this vaccine to be something to infect Black people, kind of thing. And so that is kind of what I just, thought about. Like, this is affecting too many people worldwide, and there are tons of white people that are dying too, and tons of other non-Black people that are dying too. And so, like, this is something that we've got to do for all of us. And so, that's kind of how I got over my hesitancy. And I did, you pray about it. And then, like, it's just like, okay, I'm about to get this shot. Okay. Lord, just protect me. Like, literally, I had a conversation with with the friend. So I also have another a friend who is she's also in the healthcare. She's a healthcare professional, and she also, we had this conversation. She was hesitant too, but she got the vaccine, both doses, and she's fine as well. So, and she works with transplant, and she works for Mid-America Transplant.
Okay.
So and this disease is like it is so crazy. Like there's this report that came out either earlier this week or last week where they did a double lung transplant on a patient, and they didn't know the patient had COVID.
Oh yes, and
the patient died.
Yes, I saw
because
that.
they didn't know, and she was one of those asymptomatic people
Right.
who died. She died from a brain injury. She was in a car accident, I think. The donor of the lungs.
Yes.
And they harvested the lungs and then implanted the lungs or transplanted the lungs into this patient who needed a set of lungs. And the patient just started not doing well a few days after, or it might have even been 36 hours after the transplant. And the thing is, they had tested the donor with a swab, and it was negative, but they found that actually she had virus that had affected her actual lung tissue.
So she may have been asymptomatic.
Correct.
Shredder.
Yep.
Spreader. Yeah.
And so now they're rethinking like with transplants, with COVID now, like do we need to start actually testing tissue that we're going to put in somebody else's body? You know what I mean? So like there's things that we just don't even know about that's affecting people, and we're still having to learn about it. And the only way to get out of this is to not be ignorant or delusional or just completely ignore what's out there. The Bible even says in the Old Testament, my people, they perish for a lack of knowledge.
Right.
So like you can't just be sitting out there thinking, oh, I'm just gonna wait on but like do your research too. I mean,
that's right.
Even the Bible admonishes us to study to show ourselves approved.
Right.
So if we need to do that so that we can live a life pleasing to the Lord, then part of living life is not just living in the church. You got to live outside the walls of this church. So like you got to be able to live life outside the church too, and that means ingesting other knowledge.
Right.
Besides just reading the Bible all the time. I'm not being funny with that. I'm being realistic and critically thinking. God made this whole world, not just the church. He made the whole world. So like you got to know about some things outside of the church.
Right. This goes back to the scriptures earlier about Proverbs. There's a wise man seeketh knowledge.
Absolutely.
And yes, go ahead, Pastor.
When the Bible says the Holy Ghost,
Oh, did I do?
I can say it loud now.
It's okay.
When the Bible says the Holy Ghost will lead and guide you in all ways of truth, that means truth even outside of the church.
Absolutely.
So it accentuates the point you just made.
Yeah.
Even that truth outside these doors is the Holy Ghost will lead and guide you. But you got to take the effort to understand it. I thank God for my wife because she has a greater acumen to this medical knowledge than I do, where she's even able to help me understand what I didn't understand. And I'm so glad that if you go back to that slide, honey, just back up one. I'm so glad that she and I were able to go ahead and get it, because I want to be an example.
Yeah. Well, and we have examples of people who were like part of the persuasion of maybe I'm just gonna do what I've been doing regardless of this thing that's wreaking havoc out there. And we know that one of the largest black denominations lost a lot of leaders due to this virus. Now I'm not saying it's because they were totally like, well, I'm gonna have church anyway. I have no idea why. Like I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that the church cannot be dismissive. And the church cannot be, particularly the black church, because this thing is killing us.
Yes, it is.
At a higher rate. Like, this thing is literally killing us.
Right.
So, like, the black church has to be on board with sound knowledge and with sound wisdom. God has given us not the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind.
Right.
Yes.
Which in some translations means just self-discipline. The part of self-discipline, I feel like, is seeking out knowledge for things that are out here and are affecting you, whether you want it to affect you or not, whether you want to believe it or not. It is affecting you, so it does behoove us to seek out some knowledge and to learn to understand and to seek to understand. With all thy getting understanding.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the Bible has all these scriptures that are actually really practical. If you just read
Yes.
them,
Just read
read
Proverbs.
them.
Right.
It's very, very practical, just principles for living.
Right.
And so like you take those principles and you can apply them to other things besides just
A blessing.
just coming to church on Sunday
Right.
and Wednesday night or whatever.
Put 'em in a
You know
box.
what I mean? Yeah.
Right.
Like God is way bigger than the church.
Way
He's
bigger.
way
Yes.
bigger. He actually has us in the church, and the point is to go out
Yes.
and to live a life that's
Yes.
different, that will attract people to be like, well, wait, what is that? And
Yes.
so, like, God has people in every industry and every
Yes.
platform with all kinds of education. And so, like, the church needs to, like, continue to evolve, particularly the black church, when it comes to some of our mindsets about just life in general. Like, we have to evolve, because otherwise, like, my generation, like, we critically think and we have access to too much information for, the church to be saying just any kind of thing to us from the pulpit. We have access to too much information.
Too much.
And a lot of us, we critically think. We think a little bit differently, and we're exposed to a lot more than maybe, you guys' generation is. And so we've got to learn to use the Bible differently to be able to live out in the world that we live in. So, go out, read a book.
Read the words.
Yeah, that's
Get
read
in
some
a
other books too.
Get in a church like this church, when we unpack scripture, and our pastor is very big on, and our Christian education theme is I want to know so I can grow. We unpack scripture. We don't do sound bites.
Yeah, right.
We don't do
you
sound bites
you
here.
can't take it.
We don't do. We go by examination, not tradition.
Yeah.
And it makes us not probably perhaps the most popular, but we don't care. We are healthy. Just say that. It's the truth. When you sound doctrine does not draw huge crowds, but it is the truth. Just like this is true. This is based on facts.
Yeah.
It's based on facts. It's based on science, and God is the scientist. You have to remember that.
Yes, he is.
He is the scientist. This earth is his. The fullness thereof. Every single critter, creature, cell, everything is his. This is his virus. And he's given us the grace, mercy, and the knowledge to be able to understand how to navigate through this and still be able to repent, because he's given us a space. Yes, ma'am. I see another hand back there.
Could you talk about how to get on a list?
Yes, that's my next.
Do you have a slide for that?
What I have is,
You know how to get on the list.
yes, what I have here, and this is actually, that's why I wanted to hear too, this is changing. This is from BJC's, this is phase 1A, which I believe we pretty much have gotten.
Changed.
It hasn't changed, because I heard that we are now, I think, in tier 3. This is 1B tier 1. So I know
So maybe nationally we might be on tier 3,
But the state of Missouri
is not.
is not.
The
Okay.
state of Missouri is
So
not.
this is still updated. This is still accurate then.
Yes,
So
as
one
far
of,
as because we still have. What is your next slide?
the next slide is tier 2, 65 and older.
So we're kind of in all of this together.
Turn your mic on.
Push it off.
It's up.
Okay. Tier 2, they're kind of blending all of this together too, because we also know that in some where they have the vaccinations applied in some largely black areas, they're having a lot of non-black people coming to those areas and using up the vaccine that is meant for that community.
Yes.
And that is also very important to realize. And I've actually heard a couple of stories in the last couple of days
Yes.
from people having a hard time getting on a list because they are black. Whereas there are other people. So like I heard of this story where there's this black couple, both of them trying to get on the list to get a vaccine, older black couple, could not get on the list. Well, they had a neighbor to come who was white and call for them and act like they were, like this older couple was her parents, and they got on the list immediately. So like those things are happening. And so how you get on the list is you need to register on every health system site until one of them calls you is what you need to do. So BJC, SSM, Mercy,
Yes.
St. Luke's might be independent. So if you go to KSDK, they have a list of all the different sites that you can register for a vaccine. And I haven't gone through the registration process because I work at BJC. So like, they started sending out registrations for the vaccine before the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
So, and we did that in a phase too, like the older workers.
Yeah.
Or staff members
staff
got
members.
it first, and then they went down the line from there. And so I don't know. I mean, you could probably talk me through that process of registering because I don't know.
And the other
They ask
challenge
your age
is
and email address and all of
yes,
that.
they do ask age. They want to get to where you fit into all of these criteria
Right.
that are in these slides. And there's I just put them up here so you can see. Here's education. So
we're kind of blending all of these together.
Yeah, they're blending it. That's what I was saying.
Teachers won't be able to get a shot until March 15th.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I heard. Yeah, so in teach.
Yeah.
But then you're getting people who have they're not in these tiers that are getting vaccinated. So like, I
There's
don't know.
still some.
There's a lot of
some
inequity in the way that the
yeah,
vaccine is also being
yes,
distributed.
yes.
There's a lot of inequity, and like
Yes.
the CDC acknowledges it, like it just is what it is, which
Right.
is actually just it's more of a manifestation of the larger problem in America as well.
Yeah, it is.
So,
It is, and it goes back to the previous administration not having a broader plan from the get-go about what
Right.
happened to roll it out, to give the states guidelines. None of that was in
Yes.
place. So the new administration had to come in and try to
Yeah.
figure out what to do.
Well, and the inequities I think are
And
also
inequities
stemming
coming
back
into that
from
as well.
the genesis
Yes.
of America.
Yes,
So,
unfortunately, yes.
Yeah,
You guys are talking over each other, you're making it hard to,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, one talk at a time.
We forget
Well, yeah,
that we're
yeah.
forget that we're live.
Yeah,
What I was saying is that the inequities that has been disposed or exposed this year in 2020, Black people knew they existed, right?
Right,
Like we
right.
live this every day.
right.
But there are lots of other people who like are shocked that it is this inequitable, and it's like, but no, this stems all the way back. Like this has been the experience of Black and brown folks and Native folks in this country since the beginning of this
Right.
country. And so I think when you have a situation like this, like a pandemic, it just highlights that inequity even the more. And it actually just shows like how dire of a situation this is in America
Right.
Does that answer your
for the
question?
have-nots.
I'm sorry. Does that answer your question, Sister Robin?
But yeah, so when March 15th rolls around, then I need to start just registering on everything.
No, I will register
Do it
now.
now. Do it now.
Yeah, because it's gonna take, and actually I don't know, is the school board like having you guys, like how are they getting information to you?
Right now, they just emailed us that March 15th is when teachers can start getting, our teacher organization is looking into,
Okay.
well, how can we, as a district,
Yeah.
get vaccinated at the same time?
Because you guys may have a totally different distribution process if they sent you an email. I would maybe ask your immediate administrator, like, what is the process for that, and ask if you physically need to register on one of the vaccine sites. Because if you've got an email that already says that you can start getting, there's probably a different process in place specifically for teachers in a school district. So I would inquire about that first before I would just go register on all the other sites. Because for one, that just like is one less person for them to have to worry about if when somebody else could take that spot. So like I would inquire about that first with your school district, and then if they seem like they don't have much information, then just go register on all the sites. Yeah.
And keep in mind this particular slide too. I want you to pay attention to the criteria, at least for the BJC site where we registered. They ask questions to figure out which tier you fit in. So I want to make sure you pay attention here, especially if you're African American. Cancer, chronic kidney disease, which kind of boosts you up a little bit in the priority, even though it's still slow going.
Yeah.
But it will if you've got any of these complications. So just to make sure, again, on the BJC site, which is where I pulled this from, this information is there, and their questionnaire walks you through all of that.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to go back and point that out. Any other questions?
I
question just because of all your knowledge. I just
Yeah.
would like to ask this.
Yeah, sure.
I personally have had issues with reactions,
Okay.
not to just one thing, to gold salt injections.
Okay.
I can't even take a tetanus shot.
Oh, okay.
So I'm concerned for myself that I don't think I am eligible to take the vaccine.
So, what
other health issues?
What specific, so like, I'm not sure what's in a tetanus shot, but like I know the flu shot, they specifically ask, are you allergic to egg? Because the protein in there is like egg albumin or whatever. Is there a specific food that you're allergic to or substance? Okay, what kind of reactions have you had, if you don't mind me asking?
To the tetanus shot, I went to the doctor, perfectly healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see you're eligible for a tetanus shot.
Mm-hmm.
They gave me a tetanus shot. And by the time I got home, I physically was just ill. Like
Okay.
for days, not for just an hour.
Not for like just 24 hours,
For
but
like
for days.
5 days, I could
Okay.
not get out of bed.
Okay.
I felt like I was 90 years old.
Okay. I mean, yes, that is extreme for a tetanus shot.
Yeah.
That you get like every 10 years.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Also, I currently take a biologic, so I don't know if that has something to do with it. I don't know.
Which if you take a biologic, it might have just been something specific in that tetanus shot. And like she said, the ingredients in the COVID are sugar, salts, the actual spike protein that your immune system will recognize and build up a response to in the event that you actually are infected with COVID-19. But I would talk to your healthcare provider, your doctor, is what I would do, and kind of see what he or she has to say about your do you go to the same doctor that you had a reaction to the tetanus shot for? Okay. I would talk to your doctor, tell him what happened with the tetanus shot and other reactions that you've had, and kind of just engage them in a conversation is what I would do. That's what I would do. Because they know your health history and your medical history, whereas I don't. And so like, that is a very valid concern that you have though. And so like you know, like you might be one of the people that like,
That's the encouragement by those.
correct, exactly.
Yeah.
And wear a mask. And keep doing those things until we get some sort of like herd immunity, yes, and encourage other people. Because there are going to be, realistically, there are going to be people that aren't going to be able to get the vaccine for various reasons. So, yes, I would talk to your healthcare provider is what I would do.
Someone sent a message and they said, check with Walgreens and CVS.
CVS.
Yeah, so I do know that the state of Missouri has a contract with some of the Walmarts, like 18 Walmarts in Missouri,
yeah.
but a lot of the Walmarts are not in this area. They're like in rural areas, which is part of the problem. In Missouri, it's like, well, we have like a Walmart in Lindbergh where a large majority of the black, so in St. Louis City and County, over 90% of the black population lives north of Del Mar. So that's like North City, North County area. So like there should be a vaccination site somewhere out that way, going out that way. And there's a Walmart on Lindbergh. To me, that just seems like that should be a site, but that's neither here nor there. So yes, I would check. As far as I know, I do not know of any of the like local Walgreens or CVS is having them. In other cities, yes, they do. But here, if we're having trouble just getting them to the people, like you can call them and check for sure, but I have not heard anything about them coming to a specific Walgreens or CVS locally.
There was a Walgreens in the city, Kings Highway and Natural Bridge. That's where that incident.
That's where that incident happened
That
yesterday, and
wasn't
apparently,
Walgreens.
yeah, apparently yesterday they had a clinic at the Walgreens on Kings Highway and Natural Bridge. Which anybody that knows St. Louis and lives in St. Louis know that is nothing. That is a black area. My parents live close to that area.
Right.
And not many black people got the vaccine, but there were tons of white people that traveled over that way who never go past Del Mar. Ended up at the Walgreens on Kings Highway and Natural Bridge. Isn't that a street in one of Nelly's songs? I don't know.
I know yesterday I took my sister to get her first dose.
Uh-huh.
She went to that Omega Center.
Yeah.
That was on the news. Yeah. And also, there's an upcoming vaccination thing, what to call it? Clinic, thank you, I couldn't get the word. At the rec center by our house. That's coming up this week.
Okay.
I
Off
think,
of Redmond?
Yeah.
Oh,
the
great.
rec center. That was on the news as well, on Channel 4.
Yeah, so part
But
of
you have to
this is,
register.
like you gotta, so I would go register on all,
Yes.
just everywhere. Also register with your county health department if your city, register with the city health department. And then like you just might have to make some trips to the local news channels like every day to see, because I don't know where all these clinics are popping up at. And I don't think there's a central site where you can see where the clinics are popping up at.
Except for maybe the news stations. Now, here's the other thing.
That's what I mean, like KSDK or
Yeah.
KMOV or like the
KMOV.
local news stations. Those are the sites that I would like kind of frequent every day to kind of just see where different clinics are being held. I do know BJC is also hosting some clinics in certain places, but like I feel like those kind of pop up. Like I don't even know about.
And
where
the
all
challenge
those are
is
popping up.
not everybody has access to the internet.
Yes,
That's
that is
challenge
the
for
other. That's
city.
another inequity as well.
And that's another inequity and then there's a population that does not have access, and and there was a woman interviewed. She's an African American woman. She says, I don't know how to use the internet. I can't do that. So that again is where maybe the church, I don't know what we can do to help to navigate that here, because you don't. I can pull it up and fill out the information for anybody, give them the person's contact information in that site. So we may have to reach out to people who either don't have the means to do that, or need assistance doing that, and be their primary contact for it. But
I know KSDK, when I was looking, somebody else had called me and asked me like how to get her mom and all this kind of thing. There is also, so on KSDK's website, under the COVID-19 stuff, it does give a phone number for people that don't have access to the internet. And so like I don't know like how, if people are having trouble with that. I have no idea, because I'm from a generation we all just use electronics all the time. We do not talk on the phone like that. At least I don't talk. I'm not calling anybody.
these are the textless people I've ever seen.
Yes, I'm not calling anybody. But there is a phone number for people that are older, or people that don't have access to the internet but have access to a phone. I just don't know like what the struggle, if there is a struggle with getting through to somebody on that number. I have no idea. But it's definitely worth a try though. And I think what that number is basically asks you the information that you would enter in if you were getting on the internet. So, but there is a number. I do know that there is a number.
That's good to know.
So, and yeah, and I honestly don't even know like how they're getting information out in a concerted effort for people to even know where these, like I don't know what the process is.
That's the importance of watching the news. We say that all the time,
Yeah.
as much as you can. Look at local news, especially what's going on now. We can't, this is not a time to turn a deaf eye. I don't want to hear that. We need to stay informed. We are in a global pandemic. We've been talking about this all year. If you don't understand something, that's why we're doing this, please come and ask someone. There's no shame in asking questions.
I
That's
ask
what this
questions
is
all the
about.
time. My mother
Yeah.
actually told me, used to tell me, you ask too many questions, I don't care. It's part of my personality. It's how I learned. She actually said that she realized that me asking questions was how I learned, and then she left me alone. But like, some people just don't. Ask away.
Ask questions.
Ask away.
There's no dumb question. There's no.
Well, there are dumb questions, but not in this case.
But yeah. Gee, thanks, Nikki, for helping that case. This is becoming Comedy Central now.
Yeah. So no, please ask questions, because questions is that's how you learn
Yes.
things. So ask questions. They have access if you want to ask them to ask, like they have access to my information, and I mean I can answer texts if you want to search my number. I always answer texts.
I forget. I call her.
It's from your mother.
Okay. Oh, okay. So this is my mother. Texting Uncle David. So apparently there is a national vaccine site that is national that I guess lists where all of the vaccine sites are by state.
And you know what? I've actually got that handout. I forgot.
Okay, Uncle
I pulled it
Carol
off
is
of
sending
the
you a
UJC
message as well.
website,
Can you
and
see
I
what
can
Aunt Carol
print
said?
that out before, if it's not ready today. We're still doing pretty good with time. We can certainly make that available to you. I pulled it off. It's a PDF form we can easily print that has a list of vaccinators.
Oh,
but I know
perfect.
things have changed. That's again why you need to pay attention to the news, so that when they
Okay.
give these updates.
Oh, can we print this, get this out? Thanks, Aunt Carol. So there is actually for Mercy, SSM, and then St. Louis Public Radio, there is, there are phone numbers for people that don't have computer access that you can call
Good. Very
to
good.
register.
Thank you.
So they
Go ahead
will.
and give it.
Oh, okay. So, well, the number for Mercy is 833-364-6777.
And for those of you here, I'm going to put that on a document that I already have ready, and we'll print it out, so you don't have to scramble for paper and pencil.
And those that are watching can go
Those
back
are-
and certainly
yes.
get it.
For SSM, it's 314-687-2263. And then for St. Louis Public Radio, which I listen to often, it's one of my presets in my car, it's 314-516-6430. So any of those numbers should be able to get you to the right people.
And we can actually...
Somebody else sent something too, I don't know.
we can post that on the church's website as well. If for people who are listening may not have caught that, you can always go back and look at the recorded version of this live presentation. We can post it on our website. Those of you here, again, I'm going to make sure that's in a hard copy document so that you can take it with you. I also have frequently asked questions that kind of repeat what was in this video that the immunologist presented, and so that you can keep that with you as well, so that we can continue to be an example and be an educator in this time, because we need to have people fully informed. Any other questions? Sister Gwen.
What happens if you've already had COVID, which I had? Okay, my primary doctor told me that I got time. He said end of the year. Okay, my kidney doctor told me I had, it would be good. I can wait until the summertime. So, what do you think? I mean,
So,
I think we're on.
he said because my
oh
immune,
no, it's fine.
because of my immune system.
Yes. So he's probably thinking because you've already had COVID, you do have some immunity that's going to last for a little while.
Right.
And so let's get through the first tiers of people that don't have any immunity, either because they haven't had COVID, or they don't know that they've had it or whatever. And so I think that's probably why your two doctors said that. But yes, and so so part of this virus that the experts have not been able to really determine just yet is how long immunity lasts for. Like with this shot, they don't know. We won't know until enough people get vaccinated and we can see like whether there is a spike in cases further down the line that will kind of give a hint as to how long immunity lasts. So like we know with the flu shot, you have to get one every year. And that's because they predict the strain of the flu that will be most viral that year, and that is what they make the shot on, and so you have to get one every year. And so from what I've heard, I mean, this might be one of those things where we have to get a shot every year, just like the flu shot.
Right.
And so, yeah, they are unclear with this vaccine how long immunity lasts for. They are also unclear for people that have had COVID how long immunity lasts for. But it sounds like your primary care doctor sounds like they're within a few months of each other when you should get it. Your kidney doctor is probably being a bit more conservative because of your immune suppression and that kind of thing, which is fair. And so this summer he's probably thinking that you have a few months of immunity because you had COVID. And he probably wants to make sure that you're in the best health when you get it. And so maybe he just wants you to take that extra time to recover as well. Or it's probably a little bit of both of those things. If you have an appointment coming up with your kidney doctor soon, maybe just specifically ask, why wait? You said
I just saw him Thursday.
you just saw him Thursday? Okay, and that's when he said the summertime. Yeah, I'm thinking he said that because he's assuming that because you had COVID, you have some immunity that's going to last you for a little while.
And one of the things I noticed, and I was listening to Dr. Fauci in the Grand Rounds, that YouTube video, and he was talking about how that we have to continue to learn as this is evolving.
Yes.
He used the term evolving knowledge. He said, and as we look at the knowledge and we look at the data, as we look into see, because he's an immunologist, he's looking at that to see what we need to make changes in.
Yeah.
So that's why some of the confusion kind of happens, is people's minds shut down. Well, he doesn't know what he's talking about because they keep changing. It's because he's a scientist. And they have to keep looking as we're learning and looking at the data. So wait a minute, this data is showing us we got to change what we've been saying. It does not mean that he doesn't know what he's doing. He's doing what a good scientist does. He continues to learn, and he's looking at his data, and he's saying, wait a minute. Same thing with the mask. Initially, we didn't know about that asymptomatic shed. So they're like, no, we don't need to do masks because the healthcare workers need it. And then they found out, oh, wait a minute, this thing is moving around where people aren't sick. Yeah, we need to mask up. And then everybody, and then it became, he didn't know what he's doing, and it became political. And it's unfortunate, which is why we're trying to knock this down right here. Again, you have to stay informed.
Yeah, and science and medicine isn't perfect.
It's not
Like,
perfect,
it's not.
no.
Medicine is not a perfect science, and science is not a perfect science. And like Dr. Fauci and Alinda just said, data is always evolving, and part of data is not just numbers either. Like who has it. Part of data is also like people's behavior and like what's happening to people in their real life experience. And so some of that is what you can only do that as people live every day. You know what I mean? Like there's something new, maybe that's why we get a new set of mercies every day. Because it's something, like things just have to evolve.
Things change.
Every day. Things change all the time. And part of it in science is going to too. Science is not this hard set, this is what it is today and this is what it's going to be forever.
Right.
That's not how science works. That's not how medicine. That's not how lots of things work.
I mean, look at how we've advanced. Again, all knowledge belongs to God. He knows it. We don't. But He gives us that ability to find these things and learn these things. He already knows it.
Yeah.
He owns it. He knows it. But we, and again, operating out of His grace and mercy, are able to learn these things. That's why we need to take advantage of this knowledge that we have.
Yeah, and part of like. I think about now, like, we're wearing masks all the time. We weren't wearing masks until, like, well into March last year. Like, we went on to lockdown March 23rd last year.
Right.
And we were not wearing masks even, like, it wasn't even the recommendation for everyone to wear masks until we went on shutdown. So, like, we're all out there just walking, potentially spreading it around each other, because nobody was really wearing, there were a few that were wearing masks. But I remember I ordered my first set of N95. It took like 2 months for it to come in the mail. Right. So like, I had to find, I had a family member that gave my parents some, and my parents, they weren't going anywhere. They were like in the house and driving around, and that is it. And I did the grocery shopping and did whatever. But I remember even thinking, going to the grocery store, like literally, I gotta get in and get out. It's like this thing is out here, and I don't know. And then there was some talk at first that people were maybe getting it through their eyes, and it was just like, oh my gosh, let me get in here and get out. I'm talking about like wipes everywhere.
She's a bit of a germaphobe.
I am. But it was just like, oh my gosh. But I think about that now, and it's just like, I am going to be very, very, when we don't have to wear masks anymore, I'm probably going to be one of those ones that's still wearing a mask from them.
I'll be right with you.
Just because I'm just like, I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of things that we thought at first, like we were even thinking, like, is it coming through? Everybody was blowing Amazon up. And so people were like, I remember I'm Lysoling the 1 can of Lysol that I was able to, or no bleaching, I couldn't even get me Lysol at first.
Right.
I was bleaching boxes and leaving them on our porch for 24 hours because I don't know, is it on the box? I don't know. We did determine that it didn't live on surfaces very long, but like that was one of the things we had no idea. We didn't know.
Evolving knowledge.
Exactly. So like there's so much this time last year that we thought we knew about it that turned out to either not be true or turned out to be true, but like a little bit differently than what we thought at first. And it's the same thing. Next year will be the same thing. It'll be like, oh, I remember when we thought this last year and that turned out to not be. But like the only way to find this stuff out is for people to continue to live every day and see how it's affecting different kinds of people of different ages, people of different demographics, people that live in rural versus urban, and also people's behaviors have a lot to do with outcomes as well.
Right.
You know, and part of that human behavior and personal behavior and personal responsibility that we all have to take for ourselves is taking these precautions. That yes, everybody is COVID fatigued is what they're calling it, because people are tired of being in the house, they're tired of wearing masks. We're tired of not being able to, like, you know, hug our loved ones and family members and friends and all of that. But unfortunately, it's something that we just have to do.
Right.
I don't want another 3 to 5 million people dead because we just refuse to take some personal responsibility.
Right.
And even the whole thing with having church and like the religious community, I'm not sure how this even turned into a religious thing where, you know, people just completely defying like, I don't, that's a whole other conversation. I'm not getting into that. But even the precautions that the church is having to take, you just have to learn how to do church differently. It doesn't mean that we're trying to shut down the church.
Right.
That is what nobody is trying to do that. It is just that we know that churches harbor people that want to sit close together and sing.
Right.
And we know that the droplets spread further when you sing and when you talk. And so if you have a whole choir loft full of people that are singing, that stuff is probably spreading farther than 6 feet.
Right.
And
that
so
actually happened in Washington.
it's happened in several places.
Yeah, the choir, they had a huge concert, and I think a few people died. I think 18 of them got sick, and a few of them died. Yeah. And we are not singing here.
Yeah, and so
we have to,
those precautions is not to make your life uncomfortable. It is not a punishment. It is not. It is just simply what we have to do with the circumstance that we're in at the moment. It is what it is. God, I saw something on Facebook when COVID first started that has stayed with me because it was a very profound, and I don't even know if the person that posted this realized how profound it was, but it says, the doors of the church is not closed. You are the church, and you are to remain open. So, like, it's not about being in the four walls. And yes, we do know there's something to be said about fellowship with the saints and all of that. And the Bible admonishes us to do that. But, okay, like, we're just in a season where we just can't do that. Like, God is not going to hold you accountable for something that you just can't do because it's not safe.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you're still fellowship. You're just doing it, you know, over the internet. You're still fellowshipping in a way.
Right.
And you're still getting the learning and the knowledge, the biblical knowledge and all of that. It's just got to be in a different way. And just because you're not stuck in the four walls of the church does not mean, it has nothing to do with your your relationship with God. It does not.
Right.
And I want people to feel comfortable to be okay with that. Because I know sometimes, I grew up in church. Sometimes it's like, if you're not there, Monday through Friday, what are you doing? It's like, well, I'm doing a lot of stuff. I'm living my life, the life that God gave me to live abundantly. And so it is okay that you can't necessarily come in a church right now. Like, it is okay. We will get there, but the only way to get there is to follow precautions and for as many people as possible to get vaccinated. Because we realize that there are some people that can't get vaccinated, some people won't, and that's fine. But the majority of us that know that us getting the vaccine is not somehow denouncing our faith in God and diminishing God's ability to heal, to save, and protect.
Right.
Then we are the ones that need to get. We are the ones that need to get that and to, you know, help encourage or answer questions or whatever. But yeah, so.
And speaking on the diminishing of the faith, there are some things we do. We wear seatbelts.
Absolutely.
We put brakes on our cars. We brush our teeth.
Yep.
Those are things that we do.
We eat meals.
I mean, we can't go out and say, well, God's going to protect me, so I'm not going to get my brakes fixed.
Yep.
God's going to stop my car. How foolish. You know, it is not a diminishing of faith.
Not at all.
To wear masks, to social distance, to wash and sanitize your hands, to change your the flavor of your church service, to make sure people are healthy. You know, and as a pastor, I've talked to other pastors who said, I'm not going to let COVID interfere with the way we worship. Well, that's ridiculous.
It is.
That's ridiculous.
To each his own. I have no thoughts on that.
I have thoughts on that.
can do that.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I might have thoughts on it, but they're just not
Right.
something I'm going to spend energy on because I believe what I believe. Everybody believes what they believe, and like God gave us the freedom of choice to believe what we believe. So
Yeah, we have to, as you say, we have to listen to the scientists and be obedient and get through this thing through herd immunity, where and we don't know what God has planned down the road.
Right.
oh, absolutely.
We have no clue what God has planned.
Sister Robin had her hand up. I want to make sure you don't forget.
Well, I was going to say, our faith is not in the thing, it's in the God who provided us with the thing.
Right.
Right.
You know, and then that doesn't diminish at all our faith in God.
No.
We're trusting, we're believing in God, but this is just how He has chosen to keep us.
Right.
Absolutely.
Keep
Right.
us, from passing it on to everybody else.
Absolutely.
You know, I had cancer, and God, you know, He didn't kill me miraculously.
Mhm.
He science to do it.
Absolutely.
Right.
The chemotherapy that
Mhm.
was out there,
Absolutely.
the radiation that was out there. For me to say, well, I'm not going to get radiation, I'm not going to go through chemotherapy, is not trusting in the God who provided
Right.
the way.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's a great summation of everything you've said.
It is.
And it was, for those of you who may not have been able to hear, one of our sister Robin, who was a cancer survivor, was talking about, we don't put the faith in the thing, we put the faith in the God who gave us the thing to heal. As my husband has said, that God, even Jesus himself used some dirt, could spit in it to heal a blind man. You know, he could have just touched it. I believe, I can't prove that in scripture, that was his demonstration example to us right then and there. You can use something to heal. You know, it's not just the prayer. It's you can use an instrument as a vehicle for the healing. And Sister Robin was saying, I took chemo, I took radiation. I still have faith in God, I trusted him, but I couldn't throw away that what he was giving. Again, it goes back to the knowledge he's given these people, whether they believe in God or not. He's given them the knowledge, and it's his grace and mercy so that we can be delivered. It's still up to him. We can be healed, we can be delivered. He still owns it all.
And he sends different things for different people because we're all not the same either. And I think sometimes the church has been, they don't realize God is a God of diversity. We don't all think the same. We don't all look the same. We've all had different life experiences that inform how we think about things. Right. And so God knows that he has to send things to people in different ways. There's this little cartoon that I saw, and I think about it often when I think about how God chooses to get things to us. There was this man that was in a boat, and there was like either a flood, and he was basically just stranded, and he was like, God, save me. Somebody came by in a boat, in a paddle, and he was like, hey man, like, let me help you. And he was like, no, I'm waiting on God to save me. Somebody else came back in some other, I don't know, water vehicle, and was like, hey, let me help you. I'm here to help you. And he was like, no, God's going to save me. I'm waiting on God to save me. Well, ultimately, I think, a couple of other people came in different kinds of ways, and ultimately the man drowned because he didn't accept the help. And then when he got up to heaven, he was like, God, I thought you were going to save me. Like, I believed in you. I trusted in you. And he was like, I tried to. I sent you to help. You didn't take it. Right. And so, like, we find ourselves as humans a lot of times saying, I'm believing in God and I'm trusting in God. Right. But you're not taking the very thing that God is trying to use to help you and to save you or to deliver you out of your situation, because you're sitting, like, literally just sitting there thinking that God is going to come down. And I think that's the thing. Right. We think that God is always going to show up in some miraculous way, and he's going to show up like as a figment. Like he did in the Bible, and that's likely not going to happen that way. Right. And quite frankly, most of us would be spooked if it happened. So, I know I would be. So, God can't be coming to me like that. So, I think we have to realize that as different people, God will get things to us in his own way, and we just have to be open to the idea. We can't be so closed-minded to put God in a box that we think God is going to show up this way when he indeed is over here trying to show up this way. But because we're so focused on, no, I'm just going to close my eyes and wait till God raptures me up. When, you could have had a longer life. Yeah. So a lot of choices that we make also influence whether God is able to, get to us or not. We sometimes hinder that.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
my point in saying all this is that getting the vaccine, doing these precautions, listening to, and like there's some people in the church that even feel like listening to doctors is just not something we should be doing. Like we're letting people take over the place of God in our lives. And no, that is not letting God take over the place in your life. That is the way God is getting us things that we need to survive in this life.
Right.
So, you know.
Again, it goes back to his mercy on us.
Yeah.
He could have wiped us out with this virus. I don't know if I said that earlier.
Yeah.
He could have made that thing so deadly because we have gotten so far away from obedience and adhering to his word and living right. He is being so merciful. He has sent fires and floods and hurricanes and earthquakes. Everything that was in the previous slide I had up here, all these things are going on because it's the beginning of sorrows. He's done all of that. It's okay, I'm going to get your attention now. I'm coming for your body. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to listen to the scientists? Are we listening to the message? Are we really, do we really understand what's going on? Yes, it's not as great. We need to know that. But truly, from a spiritual perspective, this is the time. This is the time for repentance. It is the time. That's why he's got this great mercy with this great knowledge. He sent a deadly virus, but yet he gave us scientists. He gave us medical knowledge to be able to maneuver our way through this so that we can, if it's his will, survive if we listen to the scientists. We're talking about God. Pastor, anything to add? Nikki, anybody, any other questions? No other questions?
I don't have a question, I just want to say thank you for the information.
You're very welcome.
Very.
Thank God. I thank God for the ability and the technology, and I thank Nikki for taking the time to be here and sharing her knowledge and working with me on this. I'm very appreciative. And for all of those of you out there in Cyber Church who've been listening, we thank God for you. We hope this has been helpful. Again, as I mentioned earlier, all of those phone numbers that were shared, we'll make it available on our website, the church's website. Facebook page. I'm sorry, I said website earlier. I've got web in my mind. Facebook page, corrected. We'll put it on the church's Facebook page so you can see it. And for those of you here, we'll have a printed copy. Again, thank you all for your time and attention today. God bless. Wear your mask, wash your hands, stay safe.
Social distance.